As the hunting season approaches, horror stories from the deep forests often emerge, making listeners shudder. Hunts are not only a test of skill, but also a battle with mysterious and scary things. Here are 3 true stories, each filled with fear and mystery, that will make you rethink what can happen in silent forests. Story 1: The Forest of Death, the hunt haunted by a terrifying mystery. When someone goes hunting, the deep and silent forest often creates the ideal setting for horror stories. Below is a story believed to be true, told by a man named Robert Sherman in June. His story takes place in upstate New York, a place I am also quite familiar with. Robert, a passionate hunter, has always found serenity in hunting, a tradition he inherited from his father. One Saturday, he decided he would pass this passion on to his son, Peter, a 10-year-old boy whom Robert felt was about time introduced to the world of hunting. With pride, Robert readies both Remington Model 798 sniper rifles, although he will keep his gun until he finds a suitable place. They stopped at a deer hunting tower hidden deep in the woods, where Robert often went to hunt. However, he felt that this place was not the best starting point for Peter. He was mentally prepared to transfer this experience gently, to avoid the boy feeling bored. At the beginning of the journey, Robert taught Peter the basics of guns, not wanting to let the boy go out without the necessary preparations. Although Peter started out with excitement, quickly the waiting and silence of the forest made him feel discouraged. Peter often yawned and sighed, which frustrated Robert. He worried that this sport might bore Peter and decided to change the hunting location. This change seemed to make Peter feel more excited. As they began to move, a sound of footsteps sounded from afar, seemingly breaking the eerie silence of the forest. Robert gently placed his hand in front of Peter's face, signaling the boy to raise the gun. Peter followed excitedly, but Robert suddenly spotted a head looming from behind a large tree. A cold feeling spread through Robert as he realized that this was not a wild animal, but could be something much more terrifying. Robert's palm was cold as he pushed Peter's gun down, disappointment and relief mixing in his emotions. Although they avoided a dangerous situation, the creepy feeling of the forest did not easily leave both of their minds. Robert quickly apologized to the strange man, waved his hand and watched the figure disappear behind the tree. Even at a distance, Robert could not determine whether the person was another hunter, but his presence brought a feeling of confusion and suspicion. The man's face, although unclear, exuded something strange. Robert felt this was rare, and the man was not like an ordinary hunter. To ensure safety, Robert decided to lead Peter in a different direction, even though they found no sign of the deer. When Peter asked about the man, Robert didn't want to lie, simply saying he didn't know and shouldn't come closer. Sometime later, when Peter started complaining about hunger, Robert felt hungry too. They stopped for a snack, but Robert couldn't hide his disappointment when nothing happened while he ate his sandwich. Suddenly, footsteps sounded from afar, and Peter immediately picked up his rifle and pointed it in that direction. Robert felt his heart stop when he saw the strange man reappear, this time from behind a closer tree. Robert lowered Peter's gun again, noticing that the boy was feeling uncomfortable. He told Peter to wait where he was and started walking towards the man, trying to prepare himself to face him. But as he approached, a strange feeling filled Robert's mind. He wondered what he was doing, leaving his son in the forest. The feeling of insecurity prompted him to turn back quickly, telling Peter that they needed to leave this place immediately. While walking back to the main road, Robert kept hearing the sounds of branches breaking and leaves crunching from behind. He urged Peter to go ahead, while he himself turned, tensed and angry, towards the man standing behind the tree. As Robert approached the tree where the man had been hiding, he saw the figure retreat, disappearing from view. There was a thud, as if something had fallen to the ground. Robert loaded the gun and cautiously walked towards the tree. He didn't speak, focusing on climbing the tree to check. When he got there, horror overwhelmed him when Robert saw a human head lying on the ground with no body attached. This sight made him feel like everything around him was collapsing, as if he had been trapped in a living nightmare. Without looking up or around, Robert only focused on his head, then rushed towards Peter, telling him to run. They returned home safely within 5 minutes, but Robert couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. All night long, he stayed awake to protect his family. The next day, through his wife, Robert discovered 2 disappearances of local hunters. He immediately reported the incident to the police, sharing what he had experienced. What puzzled Robert was how this man could kill 2 hunters, who obviously had to be armed. From then on, Robert continued to hunt with his son, but never forgot the thrill and fear that day brought. Story 2: The Forest of Death, the hunt that was traded off. The next story, submitted by Nathan Zielinski just a month ago, is a combination of camping and hunting. 21-year-old Nathan and his friends Anthony, Christian, Tom, and Tom's girlfriend, Diana, decided to go on an elk hunt in a remote area of Colorado. They prepared for the journey with 2 tents, large sleeping bags, enough food and water for 2 days, and of course guns. Nathan couldn't remember the name of the gun Anthony gave him. He only knew it was a basic gun, a normal hunting gun. Even so, Nathan couldn't help but worry about killing a creature with a will to live just for the pleasure of hunting. This feeling made him feel uncomfortable. Although he had been invited many times, this was the 5th time Anthony had asked, and Nathan felt he had no choice but to agree. He decided not to shoot any animals on the trip. After stopping at a parking lot, the group unloaded their belongings and hiked into the woods for about a mile before setting up camp. Immediately after setting up the tent, everyone started listening to Anthony, who was proudly babbling about hunting techniques. Nathan felt depressed, wishing someone else felt the same way, but everyone was serious. When Nathan raised a sarcastic question about not speaking so as not to scare away his prey, Anthony reacted violently. Feeling Anthony's seriousness, Nathan decided to keep quiet. The hunt continued, and before long, they encountered a group of 3 dirty and strange-looking men. These people have long, sticky hair, looking like a family living separately in the deep forest. They looked at Nathan's group and nodded as they passed by. Even though these 3 people weren't following them, their appearance in this situation made Nathan and his group feel extremely uneasy. A sense of panic spread through the group as they were deep in the forest, far from residential areas, and the files were completely empty. Finally, Anthony shot a deer. They dragged the deer's carcass back to the campsite, where it became their dinner. The next scene is a bloody, disgusting process of skinning a deer. Nathan stood from afar, unable to bear the scene, and could only watch for a few seconds. The horrifying noises and sights of gutting the deer filled Nathan with dread, and despite some sense of satisfaction when the hunt was over, the macabre feelings still haunted him. Anthony prepared venison burgers for the group, with buns and other ingredients. Although Nathan was not completely satisfied with hunting, he was still impressed with Anthony's dedication. As night fell, and the fire outside the camp was still burning. The group prepared for bed. Nathan struggled to get comfortable in his sleeping bag, while Anthony and Christian seemed to fall asleep quickly. Nathan, on the other hand, had to roll non-stop for at least 2 hours. As Nathan was about to get up to go out, he heard footsteps from outside the tent. He tried to name Tom or Diana, but worried what if it wasn't them. He lay quietly, pretending to sleep, and suddenly heard the tent zipper being pulled down. There was a brief pause before the tow rope was pulled up again. Nathan waited until the footsteps left. It seemed like those people were moving towards Tom and Diana's tent. Nathan realized that they must have been checking to see if the group was asleep and may have known that he was messing around. Deciding to joke around with those people, Nathan waited about 5 minutes before unlocking the tent and crawling towards Tom and Diana's tent. However, as Nathan approached their tent, he realized that the tent's zipper was still unopened. A strange feeling arose as he continued to approach. When he got close enough, Nathan saw 2 men inside the tent doing something to Diana. The terror made him scream as loud as he could, both to express his fear and to wake up the rest. Anthony and Christian immediately rushed out of the tent, rifles in hand, as the 2 men hurriedly fled the tent. Nathan realizes that these men are the same 2 people he met earlier in the forest. Anthony and Tom shot bullets at them to scare them, but something scarier happened next. When shots rang out, the group realized with horror that the men had fled into the bushes and behind surrounding trees. They moved quickly in many different directions. Attempts to awaken Tom and Diana proved futile. It looked like they had been injected with a sedative. With no other choice, the group was forced to wait until they regained consciousness. A terrible feeling prevailed as Nathan and his friends had to run back to their car in the dark forest, one of the scariest moments of Nathan's life. They don't know who this group is. It could be an inbred family living alone in the forest, or even a group of cannibals. Although they didn't know what plans these people had with Tom and Diana, Nathan and his friends only felt relieved when they finally escaped the forest safely. Story 3: When hunting turns into a nightmare. The final story, written by Jared the Sprinter, shares a haunting night hunting experience. Jared is an experienced hunter who personally built an observation tower in the woods near his backyard about a decade ago. That night, Jared sat in the tower, armed with night vision scopes, preparing for an unusual hunt. Jared's tower stood quietly in the darkness of the deep forest, and he patiently waited for movement. Finally, something appeared. But instead of a wild boar or some other wild animal, Jared realized it was a man. The person was wearing black sweatpants, black shoes, and a black hooded sweatshirt. However, what made Jared feel creepy was not only the man's outfit, but the bag he was dragging behind him. Jared's heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the man was probably trying to bury a body. Jared continued to observe, holding the gun firmly in his hand, but did not dare to act immediately. Suddenly, the man seemed to slow down and appeared to turn his head toward the tower where Jared was hiding. Fear made Jared's limbs tremble. He crouched low under the tower's wooden walls, trying not to make any noise. Even though he had a gun, the thought of using it against a human made him feel uneasy. Those moments seemed endless. Jared waited in extreme anxiety. He didn't dare breathe loudly, trying to listen to the sounds of footsteps and leaves moving in the forest. All he heard was footsteps, the sound of a foot hitting one of the wooden planks on the tower's ladder. The entire tower seemed to shake and sway as 2 more steps were moved up. Each step echoed in the stillness of the night, making Jared feel as if the man's presence was drawing closer. In the eerie silence, Jared wondered if the man could detect him. A feeling of confusion and fear took over his mind as the sound of footsteps grew closer and closer. The image of a man dragging a bag and the sound of the tower shaking in the dark night created a tense and creepy atmosphere. In the back of his mind, Jared wondered if he could shoot at a person. Despite having many chaotic thoughts and worries, he decided not to take immediate action. The man under the tower seemed to have changed his mind and did not continue climbing. Jared heard a loud noise as the man jumped to the ground, dragging the heavy sack with him. A temporary sense of security filled Jared's heart, but only for a moment. He stood as silent as a statue, his heart pounding, for about 10 minutes, trying to calm down. When everything was quiet again, he looked through the wooden slit of the tower. The surroundings seemed peaceful, but Jared knew he had to go home and call the police immediately. He jumped over the ledge, dove down the ladder, and turned on his pocket flashlight, realizing immediately that this action could be a bad decision given the situation at hand. Fear made him speed towards his house. After running for about 10 seconds or more, Jared heard frantic footsteps behind him, leaves falling from the man's haste. He glanced over his shoulder, seeing the man just inches away from him. In a fearful reflex, Jared turned and shot the man in the shoulder. The sound of the bullet hitting the body made the man stop and cry out in pain. Jared took that moment to run once more toward his house, feeling regret and hindsight at not holding the man hostage. Upon arriving at the house, Jared quickly called the police. They responded quickly. Within just 15 minutes, the investigation team appeared. Jared led them into the woods, to the exact spot where he shot the man. A faint but clear trail of blood led through the forest leaves, extending to the body bag that the police seized. Finally, the man was captured while hiding under a log next to the tree where he had been standing. The man was later tried and convicted for murder, the victim being Jinquen Sakanaki, a Japanese corner store owner. Although Jared doesn't know all the details of the backstory, he is certain that he will never forget this horrifying experience. It will be a vivid memory that he will recount for the rest of his life. These stories are more than just ordinary hunting experiences, they are reminders of the unpredictability in life. When you enter the wild forests, always be cautious and remember, not everything is as it seems. Hopefully these stories have made you think and feel more deeply about the world around you. Please share your thoughts and don't forget to follow the next stories.